Hello and welcome to episode 48 of the Idiot Book Nook. We are getting ever so closer to episode 50. My name is Blazewing, my pronouns are she, her, and they, them.
I am the Reading Dragon. My pronouns are she, her.
My name's Lady Punnet. My pronouns are she, her. Sometimes they, them. Today is a she, they kind of day.
And I'm Crittershy. My pronouns are she, her, with a sprinkle of they, them.
Stay she, her, or they, them day?
It's mostly a she, her day, but it has the potential to switch.
As it does. This is going to be chapter 32 of the Amulet of Samarkand that we are going through today. Thank you very much for joining us for this episode. If you'd like to follow us on social media, you can do so at lanktr.ee/idiotbooknook, where you can find links to our socials. You can find links to our YouTube and our podcast. If you happen to miss the stream on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Mountain Time at twitch.tv/blazewing2010, for the moment, you can catch our videos episode by episode on the YouTube. It's filtered a little bit. We also have the podcast. If we're not on your favorite podcasting platform, let us know. We'll see what we can do about that. Again, welcome, Critter. Your second episode now, pretty much. How are you feeling?
Pretty good. I haven't read anything yet.
Oh.
But from what I'm pre-screening, looks like I'll be doing a little bit. But so far, yes, it is nice to be here.
It'll be between you and Lady Punnet. And we are going to try and see about potentially going around for narrators and whatnot. So we'll work out mechanics when we're not recording and whatnot.
No worries.
Yeah. Other than that, narrator, are you ready?
Yes. Okay, hold on a second.
Covered in paper confetti. Ah!
Anywho. The Bartimaeus Trilogy, Book 1, The Amulet of Samarkand, written by Jonathan Stroud, narrated by the Reading Dragon, voice acted by the Reading Dragon, Blazewing 2010, Lady Punnet, and Crittershy. Chapter 32.
Times!
Sorry, I was trying to.
I don't.
I was trying to multitask and I failed. I missed my spot.
Critter, you go first.
Okay. Times, morning edition.
The newspaper boy wheeled his handcart slowly along the pavement, stopping whenever passerby thrust coins in his direction. The crowd was thick, and the boy's progress was slow. He had barely made it as far as the baker's by the time Nathaniel and Bartimaeus sidled out of the alley beside the derelict library and crossed the road to meet him. Nathaniel still had in his pocket the remnants of the money he had stolen from Mrs. Underwood's jar a few days before. He glanced at the cart. It was piled high with copies of the Times, the government's official paper. The newspaper boy himself wore a large checked cloth cap, fingerless gloves, and a long dark coat that reached almost to his ankles. The tips of his fingers were mauve with cold. Every now and then he roared out the same hoarse call. We could not hear you just now, Critter.
I forgot my push to talk. Times, morning edition.
Nathaniel had little experience of dealing with commoners. He hailed the boy in his deepest, most assertive tone.
The Times. How much is it?
Board your pants, kid.
Coldly, Nathaniel handed over the change and received the newspaper in return. The paper boy glanced at him, first incuriously, and then with what seemed a sudden intense interest. Nathaniel made to pass on, but the boy addressed him.
You look rough, chum.
He said cheerily.
Been out all night?
No.
Nathaniel adopted a stern expression, which he hoped would discourage further curiosity.
Course you ain't, course you ain't.
The paper boy said.
And I wouldn't blame you for not bidding if... And I wouldn't blame you for not admitting if you had, but you ought to be careful with the curfew on. The police are sniffing about more than usual.
What curfew's this? The genie asked. The paper boy's eyes widened.
Where have you been, mate? After that disgraceful attack on Parliament, there's an 8 o'clock curfew each night this week. It won't do nothing, but the search spears are out, and the night police too, so you'll want to haul up somewhere before they find you, and eat you. Looks to me like you struck lucky so far. Tell you what, I could find you a good place to shelter tonight, if you need it. It's safe, and the spots to go.
He paused, looked up and down the street, and lowered his voice.
If you've got anything you might want to sell.
Nathaniel looked at him blankly.
Thank you. I haven't.
The boy scratched the back of his head.
Suit yourself. Well, can't hang about chatting. Some of us got work to do. I'm off.
He took up the holes of his handcart and moved away, but Nathaniel noticed him look back at them over his shoulder more than once. Strange, Bartimaeus said. What was that about? Nathaniel shrugged. He had already dismissed it from his mind.
Go and get me some food and warmer clothes. I'll go back to the library and read this.
Very well. Do try to keep out of trouble while I'm gone. The genie turned and headed off into the crowd. The article was on page 2, sandwiched between the Employment Ministry's monthly request for new apprentices and a short report from the Italian campaign. It was 3 columns in length. It noted with regret the deaths of a severe house fire of the Internal Affairs Minister Arthur Underwood and his wife Martha. The blaze had started at approximately 10:15 p.m. and had only been fully extinguished by fire crews and emergency service magicians 3 hours later, by which time the whole building had been gutted. 2 neighboring houses had been badly affected, and their occupants evacuated to safety. The cause of the fire was unknown, but police were keen to interview Mr. Underwood's apprentice, John Mandrake, aged 12, whose body had not been recovered. Some confused reports had him being observed running from the scene. Mandrake was rumored to be of an unstable disposition. He was known to have assaulted several prominent magicians the year before, and the public was told to approach him with caution. Mr. Underwood's death, the article concluded, was a sad loss to the government. He had served his ministry ably, and his life had made many significant contributions, none of which the paper had space to describe. Sitting below the windows, Nathaniel let the paper drop. His head sank against his chest. He closed his eyes. Seeing in cold, clear print the confirmation of what he already knew struck him like a fresh blow. He reeled with it, willing the tears to come. But his grief remained pent up, elusive. It was no good. He was too tired for anything. All he wanted was to sleep. A boot nudged him, Not softly. He started and woke. The genie stood over him, grinning. It carried a paper bag from which steam curled promisingly. Raw hunger overcame Nathaniel's dignity. He snatched the bag, almost spilling the polystyrene cup of coffee on his lap. To his relief, beneath the cup were two neatly wrapped grease-proof paper parcels, each containing a hot steak sandwich. It seemed to Nathaniel that he had never eaten anything half as good in his entire life. In 2 straight minutes, both sandwiches were gone, and he sat nursing the coffee in his chilblained fingers, breathing heavily. What an exhibition, the genie said. Nathaniel slurped the coffee.
How did you get this?
Stole it. Got the... What is this word?
Delicatessen.
Delicatessen, okay. Got a delicatessen man to make it all up, then ran off with it while he was at the cash register. Nothing fancy. The police were summoned. Nathaniel groaned.
That's all we need.
Oh, don't worry. They'll be looking for a tall, blonde woman in a fur coat. Speaking of which... It pointed to a small mound amid the debris of the floor. You'll find some better clothing there. Coat, trousers, hat, and gloves. I hope they'll fit you. I picked the scrawniest sizes I could find. A few minutes later, Nathaniel was better fed, better clothed, and partially revived. He sat beside the fire and warmed himself. The genie crouched nearby, staring into the flames.
They think I did it.
Nathaniel indicated the newspaper. Well, what do you expect? Lovelace isn't going to come clean, is he? What magician would do a stupid thing like that? Bartimaeus eyed him meaningfully. The whole point of starting the fire was to hide all trace of his visit, and since he couldn't kill you, he set you up to take the rap.
The police are after me.
Yep. The police on one side, Lovelace on the other. He'll have his scouts out trying to track you down. A nice little pincer movement. That's what he wants. To keep you on the run, isolated, out of his hair. Nathaniel ground his teeth.
We'll see about that. What if I go to the police myself? They could raid Lovelace's house, find the amulet.
Think they'll listen to you? You're a wanted man. I use man in the broadest possible sense there, obviously. Even if you weren't, I'd be cautious about contacting the authorities. Lovelace isn't acting alone. There's his old master, Schuyler.
It's actually Schuyler.
No, there's his old master, Schuyler.
Schuyler?
Of course, the wizened, red-faced old man.
Schuyler is his master? Yes, I know him. I overheard them discussing the amulet at Parliament. There's another one too called... Lime?
The genie nodded. That may just be the tip of the iceberg. A great many search spheres chased me when I stole the amulet that first night. They were the work of several magicians. If it is a wide conspiracy and you go to the authorities, you can't trust anyone in a position of power not to tip him off and kill you instead. For example, Sholto Pin, the artifact merchant, may be in on it. He is the one He is one of Lovelace's closest friends, and, in fact, I was having lunch with him only yesterday. I discovered that shortly before I was unavoidably detained at Pin Shop. Nathaniel's anger flared.
You were far too reckless. I asked you to investigate Lovelace, not endanger me.
Temper. That's precisely what I was doing. It was at Pin's that I found out about the amulet. Lovelace had it taken from a government magician named Beecham, whose throat was cut by the thief. The government badly wants it back. I would have learned more, but an Afrit came calling and took me to the tower.
But you escaped. How?
How? Well, that was the interesting thing. Bartimaeus went on. It was Lovelace himself who broke me out. He must have heard from Pin or someone that a genie of incredible virtuosity. Yeah. Sorry, it's like cut in the middle.
English.
Yeah. He must have heard from Pin or someone that a genie of incredible virtuosity had been captured and guessed at once that I was the one who stole the amulet. He sent his djinn, Farquhar, and Jabor on a rescue mission. An extremely risky enterprise. Why do you think he did that?
He wanted the amulet, of course.
Exactly. And he needs to use it soon. He told us as much last night. Farquhar said the same thing. It's going to be used for something big in the next couple of days. Time is of the essence. A half-buried memory stirred in Nathaniel's mind.
Someone at Parliament said that Lovelace was holding a ball or a conference soon at a place outside of London.
Yep, I heard that too. Lovelace has a wife, girlfriend, or acquaintance named Amanda. It is she who is hosting the conference at some hall or another. The Prime Minister will be attending. I saw this Amanda at Lovelace's house when I first stole the amulet. He was trying very hard to charm her. So she can't be his wife. I doubt they've known each other very long. Nathaniel pondered for a moment.
I overheard Lovelace telling Schuyler that he wanted to cancel the conference. That was when he didn't have the amulet.
Yes, but now he's got it again. Another surge of cold rage made Nathaniel's head spin.
The Amulet of Samarkand. Did you discover its properties?
Little more than I have always known. It has long had a reputation for being an item of great power. The shaman who made it was a potent magician indeed, far greater than any of your piffling crowd. His or her tribe had no books or parchments. Their knowledge was passed down by word of mouth and memory alone. Anyway, the amulet protects its wearer from magical attack. It is, more or less, as simple as that. It's not a talisman. It can't be used aggressively to kill your rivals. It only works protectively. All amulets... Nathaniel cut in sharply.
Don't lecture me. I know what amulets do.
Okay. Just checking. Not sure what they teach kids nowadays. Well, I witnessed a little of the amulet's powers when I was planting it in Underwood's study for you. Nathaniel's face contorted.
I wasn't planting it.
Of course you weren't. but it dealt with an admittedly fairly poor fire hex without any trouble. Absorbed it, just like that. Gone. And it disposed of Underwood's lame attack last night, too, as you may have seen while dangling under my arm. One of my informants stated that the amulet is rumored to contain an entity from the heart of the other place. If so, it will be powerful indeed. Nathaniel's eyes hurt. He rubbed them. More than anything else, he needed sleep. Whatever the amulet's exact capacity, the genie continued, it's clear that Lovelace is going to use it in the next few days, at that conference he arranged. How? Difficult to guess. Why? Easy. He's seizing power. He yawned. That old story. Nathaniel cursed.
He's a renegade, a traitor!
He's a normal magician. You're just the same.
What? How dare you? I'll...
Well, not yet. Maybe. Give it a few years. The genie looked a little bored. So, what do you propose to do? A thought crossed Nathaniel's mind.
I wonder...
He said,
Parliament was attacked 2 days ago. Do you think Lovelace was behind that too?
The genie looked dubious. Doubt it. Too amateur. Also, judging by Lovelace's correspondence, he and Schuyler weren't expecting anything that evening.
My master thought it was the Resistance, people who hate magicians.
Bartimaeus grinned. Much more likely. You watch out. They may be disorganized now, but they'll get you in the end. It always happens. Look at Egypt. Look at Prague.
Prague's decadent.
Prague's magicians are decadent, and they no longer rule. Look over there. In one area of the library, the rotting shelves had fallen away. The walls there were
Muraled. Sorry.
I was going. The walls were muraled with layers of graffiti and carefully drawn hieroglyphs. Old kingdom curses, Bartimaeus said. You get a more informed class of delinquent around here. Death to the overlords, that big one says. That's you, natty boy. If I'm not much mistaken. Nathaniel ignored this. He was trying to organize his thoughts.
It's too dangerous to go to the authorities about Lovelace,
He said slowly.
so there's only one alternative. I shall attend the conference myself and expose the plot there.
The genie coughed meaningfully. I thought we mentioned something about, undue risk. Be careful. That idea sounds suicidal to me.
Not if we plan it carefully. First, we need to know where and when the conference is taking place. That is going to be tricky. You will have to go out and discover this information for me.
Nathaniel cursed.
But that will take time. If only I had some books and the proper incense. I could organize a troop of imps to spy on all the ministers at once. No, they'd be hard to control. Or I could...
The genie had picked up the newspaper and was flipping through it. Or you can just read the information printed here.
What?
Here, in the Parliament Circular. Listen. Wednesday, December 2nd, Heddleham Hall. Amanda Cathcart hosts the annual Parliamentary Conference and Winter Ball. In attendance, among others, the Right Honourable Rupert Devereux, Angus Nash, Jessica Whitwell, Chloe Baskar, Tim Hildick, Sholto Pinn, and other members of the elite. Nathaniel snatched the paper and read it through.
Amanda Cathcart. That's gotta be Lovelace's girlfriend. There's no doubt about it. This must be it.
Pity we don't know where Heddleham Hall is.
My scrying glass will find it.
From his pocket, Nathaniel drew the bronze disc. Bartimaeus eyed its askance. I doubt it. It's a poor piece if I ever saw one.
I made this!
Yes. Nathaniel passed his hand twice across the disc, and muttered the invocation. At the third time of asking, the imp's face appeared, spinning as if on a roundabout. It raised an eyebrow in mild surprise.
Ain't you dead?
It said.
No.
Pity.
Stop spinning!
Nathaniel snarled.
I have a task. I have a task for you.
Hold on a sec.
The imp said, screeching to a halt suddenly.
Who's that with you?
That's Bartimaeus, another of my slaves.
He'd like to think as much, the genie said. The imp frowned.
That's Bartimaeus? The one from the tower.
Yes?
Ain't he dead?
No.
Pity.
He's a feisty one. Bartimaeus stretched and yawned. Well, tell him to watch it. I pick my teeth with imps his size. The baby made a skeptical face.
Yeah? I've eaten gin like you for breakfast, mate.
Nathaniel kicked a foot against the floor.
Will you both just shut up and let me give my command? I'm in charge here.
No.
Right. Right! Imp! I wish you to show me the building known as Heddleham Hall, somewhere near London, owned by a woman named Amanda Cathcart. So, begone about your errand.
Hope it ain't too far off, this hall. My astral cord only so long, you know.
The disc clouded. Nathaniel waited impatiently for it to clear. And waited. That is one slow scrying glass, Bartimaeus said. Are you sure it's working?
Of course. It's a difficult objective. That's why it's taking time. And don't think you're getting off lightly either. When we find the hall, I want you to go and check it out. See if anything's going on. Lovelace might be setting some kind of trap.
It would have to be a subtle one to fool all those magicians heading there on Wednesday. Why don't you try shaking it?
It works, I tell you. You see, here we go.
The imp reappeared, huffing and wheezing as if it was hideously out of breath.
What is it with you?
It panted.
Most magicians use their glasses to spy on people they fancy in the shower, but not you. Oh no, that would be much too easy. I never approached a place that's so well guarded. That hall is almost as bad as the tower itself. Hair-triggered nexuses, random materializing sentinels, the lot. I had to retreat as soon as I got near. This is the best image I could get.
A very blurry image filled the center of the disc. It was possible to make out a smudgy brown building with several turrets or towers Surrounded by woodland, with a long drive approaching from one side, a couple of black dots could be seen moving rapidly through the sky behind the building.
See those things?
The imp's voice remarked.
Sentries. They sensed me as soon as I materialized. That's them coming for me. Fast, aren't they? No wonder I had to skedaddle straight away.
The image disappeared. The baby took its place.
How was that?
Useless, Bartimaeus said. We still don't know where this hall is, you dink.
That's where you're wrong, you dupe.
The baby's face assumed an inconceivably smug expression.
It's 50 miles due south of London, 9 miles west of the
Right.
Brighton railway line. A huge estate. Can't miss it. I may be slow, but I'm thorough.
You may depart.
Nathaniel passed his hand across the disc, wiping it clear again.
Now, we're getting started.
He said.
No, you're not.
The amount of magical protection confirms that this must be where the conference is taking place. Wednesday. We've got 2 days to get there.
The genie blew out his cheeks rudely. 2 days till we're back at the mercy of Lovelace, Farquhar, Japor, and 100 wicked magicians who think you're an arsonist. Goody. Can't wait. Nathaniel's face hardened.
We have an agreement, remember? All we need is proper planning. Go to Heddleham Hall now. Get as close as you can, and find a way to get in. I shall wait for you here. I need to sleep.
You want a lullaby with that? Humans really do have no stamina. Very well, I shall go. The genie rose.
How long will it take you?
Oh, a few hours. I'll be back before nightfall. There's a curfew on, and the spheres will be out, so don't leave this building.
Stop telling me what to do. Just leave. Wait, before you go, how do I build up the fire?
Oh, wouldn't you like to know? A few minutes later, the genie departed. Nathaniel lay down on the floor, close to the crackling flames. His grief and guilt lay down with him like shadows. But his wariness was stronger than both of them combined. In under a minute, he was asleep.
Thus ends chapter 32 of the Amulet of Samarkand. Couple of things. First of all, he didn't start the fire.
It was always burning since the world's been turning.
Second, how can you not know how to build up a fire unless it has something to do with the fact that the fire is technically magical?
I think it was more the fact that he's 12 living in central London, so he has no need to build a fire since his master probably was the one that always did it, or Mrs. Underwood.
Fair.
Or also the fact that, again, antisocial, not being brought up to socialize with others, probably never went to camp.
Fair. And next, Bartimaeus said there's a curfew on and the spheres are out, so don't leave this building. So we know the first thing that Nathaniel's going to do starting next chapter is leave the building.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, he fell asleep, so maybe he'll actually listen for once.
Well, he fell asleep, but the first thing he's going to do when he wakes up is leave the building, because we all know this book is, as one of our YouTube commenters said, this book is literally about everybody telling Nathaniel not to do the thing, and Nathaniel doing the thing anyway.
Yep.
Sounds about right.
I think Nathaniel has oppositional defiance disorder.
I mean, you're not wrong.
He's also 12.
Fair.
I know, and all 12-year-olds, unless they're like raised with like respect and mutual understanding, seem to have oppositional defiance disorder.
Also, that imp's an ass, but I love him and I want to keep him. And can I just say for a moment, I love the flavor that you are giving that imp and the fucking attitude you are giving that imp.
Yeah, that was really great.
That was awesome. Like, I love the flavor.
I feel like he's just like this, because the way I picture it, he's kind of stuck in the mirror.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's always stuck there. He's dealing with like a 12-year-old with this whole like mightier than thou personality.
Yep.
So it's like, you know what? He's just gonna be, even though he looks like a baby, he's like that old man that's just stuck inside having to babysit, like, their kid's kid, like their grandchild who's being a brat, and just like, you're not dead yet.
Yep.
He's Phil from Hercules.
I'll take it.
He's Phil from Hercules with a bit of Hades thrown in.
Yep.
Yep.
I was thinking the grumpy baby with the cigar and
Yes.
the rabbit.
Yes.
Also, I had an interesting thought earlier this chapter, back towards the beginning.
Gaming.
Hello, D-Bomb Gaming. Welcome on in.
Sack!
I had an interesting thought earlier this chapter.
What was your thought?
They were talking about the amulet and its power and whatnot and where it comes from. And then they were talking about its maker. And they mentioned that the amulet is an object of immense power, and that the person who made it had to be an accomplished magician. But they also mentioned one other key piece of information. The tribe that this maker belonged to, they didn't have books, they didn't have papers. Everything was passed down by word of mouth and memory. And we have seen Nathaniel display a fairly heightened state of memory. He has the ability to memorize things and to understand things intuitively like that. We also know that Nathaniel has shown a rather heightened level of magic, a magical aptitude and ability. He's been able to summon a magician well before most people are ready. Or sorry, he's been able to summon a demon well before most people are ready.
And not
Multiple
just any
ones.
demon, a level 14.
Yeah,
He's also
so
able to keep the imp tethered.
he's able to
very
keep
well.
the imp tethered, and he's actually able to somewhat control Bartimaeus, despite the fact that Bartimaeus is technically no longer under contract with him. Which tells me that his magical aptitude far surpasses that of anyone else. So the thought that I had is, perhaps Nathaniel's descended from this maker? Perhaps he might be an heir for the amulet itself. Perhaps he's descended from this tribe. Who knows?
Another thing is so usually, like, yeah, whenever you tell a story, like, little bits and pieces are added on, but usually the meat and bones stays the same. They don't know the name or the gender of the original amulet maker.
It's a shaman.
So it's a shaman, but it also makes me wonder, like, what if it was like someone who was non-binary, but they didn't have a word for it back then?
That's also fair.
Or someone that was gender fluid, so they were both.
That is also a fair point. Like how, correct me if I'm wrong, Hawaii, or the Hawaiian Islands, they have
Hawaii?
Yeah, the third gender.
Yep. And the Hawaiian indigenous aren't the only ones to have a third gender. Third gender has been a thing for as long as people have been around. The indigenous here in North America have been more
twin-spirited?
the two-spirited, not just the two-spirited, but the indigenous of North America have long embraced that, and it's only because of colonization that ideals like that were warped, twisted, and pushed aside.
I think I don't know if it's too spirited. I could be thinking of something else. But they also had that when it comes to the non-binary and gender fluidity, I do remember something about North American indigenous having something like that, but I think when it came to like the two-spirited thing, I think that pertained to soulmates. I could be wrong.
I can't remember. Unfortunately, my knowledge doesn't go that far in depth. But I do know that, like, non-binary identities and gender non-conforming identities have been a thing within indigenous communities since, like, forever.
I'm fairly certain also in Greece as well. Especially since a lot of things that are more gender restricted now that are starting to come out of being gender restricted were never gender restricted in Greece, such as wearing makeup or wearing gowns or having fairer skin. A lot of that, and including other parts of Europe where most things that would be considered today restricted to, let's say, women, men did first.
I'm trying to remember. There was someone. Okay, yeah. So there was someone during the time of Marie Antoinette, I believe it was, who was a spy, who was born male, but then later began to dress in feminine clothes and refer to herself using she/her pronouns. I don't remember. I think it was Chevalier d'Eon. I'm probably butchering that name.
Interesting. I didn't know. I didn't know about that actually, and I wouldn't know how to even. I wouldn't know how to pronounce that name. Critter might though.
For what? Sorry, I had to
So
hear it.
there was. It's okay. I think it was back during the time of Marie Antoinette. There was a spy who was born male, but then socially transitioned to female because back then there wasn't able to medically transition, and it was just kind of accepted.
Well, yeah, because it was not a big deal. Like it was much more common than people realize. Like it was very much a non-issue.
Yeah.
And they were known as Chevalier d'Eon. Little d thing, big E-O-N.
I'd have to see it written.
Yeah, same.
Can you copy and paste that?
Chevalier d'Eon.
There, I was right! But yeah, they were a French diplomat, spy, and soldier.
Interesting. Critter, do you have any thoughts on this this chapter?
I'm pleasantly surprised by Nathaniel's like the way he's coming up with his plan on the fly, and like making the right adjustments and still like keeping track of all the things he has at his disposal despite all his losses.
This kind of adds to the theory that Nathaniel is neurodivergent, especially when it comes to how a lot of neurodivergent people will behave under a crisis and under extreme amounts of pressure.
It's widely, it's fairly well known among the neurodivergent community that if you're in a crisis or an emergency that is time sensitive, you want one of us with you. Because of the way that our brains work, we are actually properly stimulated during times of crises, which, I mean, it's not a great thing, but we can think clearly and basically process information at a much faster rate than most people can, which means we can take stock of multiple things at once, or at least that's the way it appears. In reality, we're literally just moving at like warp speed, warp factor, fuck you.
I think that's why a lot of people like EMTs are typically like neurodivergent,
Yes.
in my experience.
Yes. That being said, jobs like EMTs also have one of the highest depression and suicide rates out of any profession out there. But during crises like that, where it is literally life or death, you want a neurodivergent individual because we can prioritize easily. We do it all the time.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, I think like I'm definitely like you can feel like we're at that build up now,
Yep,
right?
we're getting there.
We're on this track. You're feeling it.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I'm waiting for the drop now.
Yep. We're just going up the rails.
Lady,
Just hang in there. Just clamp. It's over soon.
Lady Punnet?
It's an interesting thing with Nathaniel because he is So he's a kid. He's
Yeah.
12. He is
Yeah.
a child, and
Yep.
he's trying to take control of the situation, which good on him. But he's doing it with entities who he considers under him that have vast more knowledge
And power.
and wisdom and power. And he is following through with his training of you cannot trust them. You cannot trust a demon. Demons in the end will always backstab you. But at the same time, he has no other allies. So he should try and maybe listen just a tiny bit better.
Let's also not forget that he's been able to work things out with Bartimaeus. Bartimaeus, again, we've talked about this time and time again, has this track record of showing that he actually gives a shit about Nathaniel for some reason. And up until this point, Bartimaeus has had multiple opportunities to backstab Nathaniel, and he has chosen not to do so.
Oh my fuck, I just had a theory.
What?
A game
What
theory.
What if the Egyptian boy that Bartimaeus likes to portray himself as, what if he was the shaman that made the amulet?
Oh, that's interesting.
Wouldn't Bartimaeus have known that, though? Because he seemed to be very close with the little Egyptian boy. Oh, wait. Unless Bartimaeus wasn't in his service when he made it, it would also explain why he always shows up as, like, a little boy instead of,
Yep.
like, a young adult.
Yep. It's also mentioned, though, that that boy didn't live very long. Or at least assume... Sorry, no, because we don't actually have a firm connection between that. He just said he had a master at one point who didn't live very long.
And he's lived long enough to have had many masters.
Interesting.
Would also like to point out, though, that time is relative to demons. Like, not
Fair.
very long could be, like, the human equivalent of, like, 70 years.
Yeah.
You're not wrong about that. Yeah, in that case, linear time...
I mean,
Linear
they-
time is probably weird for demons.
and they probably view what like age in a very different for them probably humans as a whole even if they're like even if they're like a senior citizen will probably just feel young no matter what.
Yeah.
I wonder.
What do you
'Cause-
wonder?
There's a theory out there right now that states that it's kind of a fringe theory. It's not widely accepted by a lot of scientists. I don't think. I'm going to have to double check on that. But it says that all of time is happening right now. All of it is happening at once. But our brains have developed to perceive it from one moment to the next, which means time itself is a construct in order to help us perceive the world around us in a better fashion. I'm wondering if demons are able to see outside of that and see literally all of time happening at once.
That is a possibility.
I mean, when you look at Bartimaeus, he's been called old because he's been around since ancient times. So, in all honesty, he probably does consider anyone that's not like the same age as him, Farquhar and Jabor. He probably considers them youngsters. So
Yeah.
it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibilities for him to think of like humans as infants.
Fair.
Humans are... No, for demons, we're hamsters.
Fair.
Oh, that's a good comparison. Like certain demons are like turtles and humans are hamsters.
Humans are just hamsters because hamsters do not live for very long. In the
think-
grand... Like, to a hamster, the lifespan of a hamster, that's long for the hamster. Even longer if they happen to just live another month to another year. To us, it's just a couple short years we get to have with a hamster if we're lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same thing with like a goldfish. Same thing with like a flower that comes from a cheap market.
Or those fish you can win at like fairs.
Yeah. But basically, for creatures and entities with shorter lifespans, for, let's say, us, we see the shorter lifespan and we see, and in our brains process this as, oh, this is such a short time, yet we understand that for the entity, that's a whole lifetime for them. Like, say, take a 14-year-old dog, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I was about to say that's like the comparison that dogs perceive us as elves.
Yeah. Yeah, dogs perceive us as, like, as we humans perceive elves. Living for fucking ever, where for them it's just a fucking blink of the eye. Because time is running differently for everything. They probably perceive time very differently.
Fair.
Yeah.
So if anything, if for Bartimaeus at least, I think he's probably always taking the appearance of the young boy, because that was probably around the time he was first summoned by him.
So in this case, the theory is that time is subjective.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, the family dog of my boyfriend's family dog. I'm using that dog as an example because that dog just passed away at 14 years old. And in dog years, that's like a good almost 120.
Yeah.
That's 120. That's almost 120 years for that
That
dog.
is
And
an
he was
old doggo.
Yep.
Yeah. And he was a Mastiff Lab mix.
So
Probably
that is
some
an
pit bull.
old dog.
Yeah, probably some pit bull in there somewhere. He was a mixed dog, but he was a stacked dog when he was younger, and then he was just like the sweetest old man just before he passed on. And another example, my cat, Princess, she passed away when she was around, we're theorizing she was probably closer to 12 or 14.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I got her, she was said to have already been 2 years old. But she was already a small cat to begin with when I first got her.
Mm-hmm.
So she might have actually been like somewhere between 4 or 6 years old. Which is why she went the way she did. With her heart disease especially. And I think it was heart disease that took Tiberius the dog as well. But he should have actually passed away a couple years ago. He was effectively being kept alive by medications and treatments. Because he also had a few tumors.
Fair.
Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking this is a good place to wrap up for this chapter, for chapter 32 of the Amulet of Samarkand. Guys, we want to thank you for joining us for episode 48 of the Idiot Book Nook. We are very fast approaching episode 50. We have 2 episodes left. If you would like to join us on social media, you can do so at lanktr.ee/idiotbooknook. You got links to our YouTube, links to the Twitch, links to the podcast, all of that jazz. If you want to leave us a voicemail message over on Anchor, it's anchor.fm/idiot-book-nook, and we are more than happy to entertain any voice messages you might have. We hope that you've been enjoying this ride, as always. We hope that you are getting at least something out of this. And it's been a hell of a ride. At least as far as I'm concerned. We're now almost through our second book here at the Idiot Book Nook. So,
Hell yeah. It's been a roller coaster.
Yep.
Of magic.
With,
Roller coaster of magic.
with that being said, for the Idiot Book Nook, I'm Blazewing.
I am the Reading Dragon.
I'm Lady Punnet.
And I'm Crittershy.
And we will see you guys for next episode, chapter 33, and episode 49 of the Idiot Book Nook. Peace out!
Roller coaster